Well, that morning he was sitting there, and when my mom started walking across the kitchen with no walker on the 11th day of wearing the patch, and she, not only was she walking, she looked over at me when I walked in the house at 8 a.m. and she said, "Hey, Nita, do you want me to make you some eggs?" This is a woman who hadn't cooked in 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Okay, we wouldn't let her operate the stove type deal. Right now she's offering to make me eggs, walking normally through the kitchen with her cute black and white polka dot pajamas. And I said, "Hey, where's the walker?" "Oh, where's the walker, Mom?" She goes, "Oh, it must be in the bedroom." I said, "Since when don't you need the walker at 8 a.m.? She goes, "Well, I didn't need it today." And I thought, you've got to be kidding me.
Welcome to the Deconstructing Conventional podcast. This interview is brought to you by Healing United, a private membership association committed to helping you reclaim sovereignty over your health, life, and future. You could say our tagline is question everything and rebuild intentionally. In the audio format of the show, there's additional commentary before each episode, and there are also over a dozen audio-only episodes. You can find the show anywhere you listen to podcasts, including the Healing United PMA app. Look for it in the App Store. And if you want to learn more about the work we do, and especially how we help people heal when the doctors have no answers, visit us online at healingunited.today. Now, on with the show. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. My guest is the lovely Renita Brannan. So let me tell you a little bit about this woman you're about to meet. She would first describe herself as a child of God. She is a wife and a mother of 3 boys. She's got a bachelor's in physical education and business. She literally has more health and fitness certifications than I have fingers and toes. She's got 25 different certifications. So here's just some of them. She's a certified personal trainer, a certified nutrition coach. She is Delay the Disease certified for those with Parkinson's, neurodegeneration, and movement disorders. She is a certified behavior change specialist, a certified biblical health coach, and interestingly certified in endocannabinoid system. And Renita pioneered the CBD industry in North Dakota and played an integral role educating the state legislature. So well done, Renita. That led to basically them rewriting the state century codes to differentiate between hemp, CBD, and marijuana. She created a DVD exercise series for an international bestseller that became an international bestseller for a billion-dollar company. She was featured on CNN Headline News for Testimony Tuesday. I love this one because she created a program that helped the state of North Dakota lose a collective 100,000 pounds of body weight, which I cannot say I've done. I don't know if I've had that much weight loss, so that's pretty impressive. She also co-authored not one, but 2 Amazon bestsellers. One was Nice and Fat, and the other is My CBD Money Tree. For 8.5 years, she was a TV personality on NBC in North Dakota, and she's done over 2,500 presentations in her career to people of all ages to help educate them in health, nutrition, and fitness. And more recently, she worked with America's frontline doctors for a year, creating educational training to teach doctors about natural health, which I can say there's a need for. There's a lot of doctors that have been slow on the uptake to learn about healing instead of treatment. But Renita, that is one long, impressive resume, and I barely scratched the surface of it. So well done. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Christian. I just love what you're doing to wake up the world, educate them, and bring all healing modalities together for the good of humans. Let's get everybody healthy and alert and awake. And I just, I have a thing I've been saying lately, get up world. It's time for everybody to get up and face what's going on and step into the light and know that they can take control for their families and their family's health. So happy to be with you today.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's so much more fun when we don't operate from a place of victimhood and when we just realize nobody else is going to manage your health for you. So let's take some ownership and let's go make a difference in the world. So it's great.
And I was going to tell you one thing that wasn't on there that I forgot to mention last time. I actually just co-authored a #1 international bestseller.
Another one?
So it's called How the Body Heals Itself. It's the inside effects. And you probably have heard of some of the amazing authors that co-authored with me, but Kelly Brogan, Dr. Bradley Nelson, he's Emotion Code, Body Code. And so I was one of the authors of that book. So that just came out.
Oh, yeah. Those are 2 other big names. So well done. So sorry, 3 now bestsellers.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have underestimated you. I'm sure next month there'll be another one, but okay. Well, so I first got introduced to you because I was trying to find somebody to help me understand this world of phototherapy, or what's also sometimes called photobiomodulation, which I think is basically just a fancy word for light therapy. But before we get into that, I just want people to hear a little more of your story. So you've got so many impressive things in your resume, but one thing that stood out to me last time we talked was your 8.5-year run being a TV personality on NBC. And you had mentioned to me some of just the internal conflict that came around with working in the media and realizing how the work you were doing to get people healthy was kind of fighting the agendas or the sponsors of the news station. So tell people some of what went on in those years and what awakening and spine you had to grow during that part of
Yeah,
life.
I'd love to. It was really an interesting journey. In fact, it really started because there was one of the gals that was the news anchor for 30 years was having a weight issue. And so she had heard that this Renita Brannan was, the word was out when I helped people lose 100,000 pounds of fat in the state. So we were talking about that from the Native American Indian reservations all the way to the, Army bases where people were, measuring and weighing and submitting these great results. So the word was out that I was really kind of helping a lot of people take control of their weight. And so she reached out to me and she said, "Hey, can you help me to lose weight?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Well, maybe we should do a segment on the show talking about it." So it all kind of came in just with, "Hey, I'm going to do it and I'm going to do it visually and I'm going to kind of do it loud." And so I actually became friends with this woman. And so we started the first segment and it was all about weight loss and her journey and how she's really going to kick this weight to the curb finally, right? The menopausal type weight and symptoms. And that's how it started. Well, I think the response was so exciting. Like everybody was like, "Wow, like I'm intrigued with this. We want to follow this." So I got a call a couple days later that said, "Hey, do you just want to be on like often, like once a week, to kind of talk about health and weight loss?" And I was like, "Absolutely." I mean, I feel like God has called me to talk to a lot of people. For years, I was a personal trainer and, group fitness instructor, had my own gyms, much like you, and was very much in the trenches one at a time. And God really called me out of that and said, "Hey, I want you to help the masses." And so I thought, wow, this is such a blessing to be able to hop on this news and to educate the people of North Dakota and South Dakota. We're not huge up here, Christian. I mean, there's maybe 800,000 people in the viewing audience. But for me, it was very substantial, right? To go from one at a time to that. So we started that and it was amazing. Like every week I got to bring in fresh, great content about health and about nutrition and just to expand people's mind. I mean, I really could talk about whatever. They didn't put me in a box initially. It was just like, "We trust you. Submit what you're talking about the day before in case we have to make any graphics for the show." And I just did that. And I was kind of marching to the beat of my own drum, which was wonderful. Because again, I was just able to really relay the message of health and healing. I was talking about prayer and meditation and all sorts of things, praying before meals and how that affects digestion. I could really talk about whatever I wanted. And so the first few years was amazing. Like it was literally like everybody was learning, everybody was happy. I would go out in public here and I would have, 78-year-old people stop me and say, "Hey, I started eating flaxseed and chia seed and I'm pooping better." I would be like, "Praise the Lord." Right. So, it was like this, I really felt like I was, doing my calling. And then it started getting a little hairy, right? There was some controversy happening up here in North Dakota. They had something called DAPL. It was the Dakota Access Pipeline. It was this whole thing with an oil company trying to run a pipeline through a reservation. And the reservation, they didn't want it for that particular dollar amount. So they were kind of going back and forth, trying to negotiate. It all comes down sometimes to the money, right? Many times it comes back to the money. And in the meantime, this thing kind of blew up on national news. And it was wild. They had all kinds of celebrities, these very kind of, they said they were like eco-conscious, I would say, very liberal-minded celebrities coming up and just really taking advantage of the situation. And so every day the news, everybody was glued to the news up here. And you could feel it when you'd go into the news station weekly. I was not feeling that, that calm and that peace and that joy. It was more like angst. And, they were really trying to move this agenda. And long story short, and it got crazy. Like it ended up lasting years. Imagine this. And it was awful what ended up happening. But I remember when it ended, Christian, and I remember coming into the news station that day, and it was just literally like just so somber, so depressing. And I said to the lead anchor, my friend, I said, "Hey, what's going on? How come everybody is so like depressed here?" And she said, "Renita, DAPL is over." And I said, praise the Lord. Isn't this a great thing? Like our state can kind of get back to normal, and people like were getting their land taken, their animals, their cows were being slaughtered because they were feeding these people that were at this. I mean, it was crazy stuff. And I said, isn't this wonderful? And she said, no. She said, you know what we need? We need another crisis. We need another crisis. And I looked at her and I was like, I mean, it was like in that moment, I was like, it all just went crystal clear. Like, oh my gosh, this media is completely moved by crisis and chaos. And it just shifted my whole being, right? Like, so this was happening actually right before the pandemic or the whole thing that happened. I mean, it literally was happening right before that. So going into that, then I thought, wow, the undertone here is not really, through a true authenticity, where we're showing people exactly what needs to happen. We're not teaching them about freedom and really health techniques that are going to work. It's kind of like this mass chaos that moves the media. And she actually said to me, don't you know more people are watching TV? So our ad dollars are up, Renita, when there's chaos, because people are glued to their TVs. She said, now that is over, she said, yeah, we just need to find a new crisis. And I was just like, wow.
Well, you got your hand slapped at one point for criticizing Coca-Cola, I think, too. Like,
I got my hand slapped often. I was kind of the gal that was like, it was easier to ask for forgiveness than to ask permission.
Right.
So I would always just go on to the media, and I was just all about the truth, right? The truth and freedom and getting North Dakotans free and the health of North Dakotans and South Dakotans. And so that was always my mission. And I was that was just always front and center for me. If I could bring health and vitality to somebody, I was going to be discussing it. But I also wanted to bring awareness, right? I was the one, think about this now. This is what, 13 years ago, talking about do not use sunscreen. Like, let's only look for zinc oxide if you're going to use it and use it minimally, right? So I was the one, and that was a hard message because I had like some of the anchors that had skin cancer, literally 6 times lathering on, this awful sunscreens, right?
Yeah.
That we know are carcinogenic. And so anyway, long story short, but one segment I was talking about that Coca-Cola should not be doing studies on diabetes. Like, it's just like a conflict of interest. You know
think?
what I mean?
You're right.
It just seems odd, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of brought that to awareness on the news that day. I was saying, hey, I was actually reading the study, what they found, which of course is not that it's the fat that, or the sugar that's a problem. It's the fat. They're always blaming fat, right? Coca-Cola. And so as soon as I got done with the segment, of course, I hear in the newsroom, Renita Brannan to the station manager's office, please. Renita Brannan to the station manager's office.
Right.
I thought, oh, here we go. And so I walked in there, and I'm pretty much like, I always envision a force field around me. I'm pretty resilient, but I went in there, and pretty much he hammered me, and he's like, listen, you can't throw our ad dollars under the bus. You can't throw the people that are supporting the entire show under the bus. I mean, and I came home that day, and I said to my husband, Scott, I said, there's just such a conflict internally for me, because everything I'm saying is so truthful and so healthy and so amazing. And then right after my segment, it's followed with a Coke commercial or a pharmaceutical commercial, right? So I said, so I was starting to have this internal battle, Christian, where I was like,
yeah,
I knew I was supposed to be there. I knew I was standing as the light in the darkness, but it got more and more difficult for me. No question about it, because it was just like I'd get on there and I just knew I was going to get called to the station manager's office most segments, right? Because I was just revealing too much truth too fast.
Yeah. And so, then fast forward to COVID. And so you end up getting terminated, and then they go and censor your internet presence, gets scrubbed. Tell people that story briefly.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, it got wild. So I knew, and I've always been a freedom fighter. Like, I was the mom that, 20 years ago quit vaccinating my kids, right? And so we have 3 boys. They're 24, 18, and 16. And we just chose not to vaccinate. When my oldest was 2.5, I had read a great book called The Politics of Cancer by Dr. Samuel Epstein. I had gone back to school for my doctorate in holistic nutrition. So I was really getting a huge education about this conflict of interest that existed between basically the pharmaceutical companies, and how, some of those head kingpins over there were all of a sudden running the FDA, right? Yep. So there was definitely all this conflictual stuff going on. So I had that awareness 20 years ago. And so I obviously quit using everything, home cleaning products and dyeing my hair. And I kind of went on this tangent where I really got holistic really quick. I mean, we quit health insurance. There's no more health insurance because I'm like, well, I don't want insurance because it doesn't cover anything that I actually use. Right.
Right.
And
We're the
so,
same way. Yes.
yeah. I was done with that 20 years ago. And actually, Dr. Simone Gold, when I was partnered with Gold Care, she actually said to me, you were way ahead of me. Right. And I was like, yeah. So it was like a long time ago, but yeah, so I knew, they knew that I was very much a freedom fighter. They knew that I was not necessarily coming out as an anti-vaxxer. I was just very much pro-education.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're going to put this needle in your children, can you name 3 to 5 ingredients of what's in this vaccine? Oh, you can't, and neither can your doctor. Right. And so, yeah. So it was that conversation that was, that I was, talking and saying, hey, listen, I want everyone to be able to have the freedom of choice to choose, but you also need to educate yourself more than you would to go on your next vacation. Like most people are like, researching, their next vacation more than they're researching what they're injecting into their children, which is irreversible many times. Right. Yeah. And so for me, it was just that messaging. And I was very clear about it. They knew about that. I was that freedom fighter, that education, pro-education message at the news station. And I knew that there was some writing on the wall when I saw the producer say, well, all those anti-vaxxers are going to get what's coming to them. Like when he posted that on Facebook, my husband goes, uh-oh. And I said, I'm just going to ride this thing out. And I mean, I'm just going to do I just made a commitment, Christian, to do everything with the spirit of excellence wherever I go. That's just who I am. And so I thought I'm just going to be honorable. And I'm going to keep spreading the truth. I'm going to do it in love. And I'm just going to keep doing the next right thing. That's just how I thought to myself. I'm not drawing any big awareness anywhere. I'm just going to do the next right thing as this presents itself. And actually, I'll never forget it. We had actually, because of the pandemic, they had actually switched. So no one was coming into the station. And everything was being broadcasted from home. So I was broadcasting from home. So my segments became more like cooking segments and exercise segments with my kids. And so I'll never forget it was the Monday after Easter. And we had just had a segment on where my boys made gluten-free carrot cake with me. So we were kind of like the healthy family that was cooking on TV. People loved it. I mean, how can you not love kids cooking, right? And little aprons and stuff. And so giving healthy ideas, healthy recipes, healthy substitutions. Amazing, right? Amazing content always, just like ours, per usual. And all of a sudden I get a phone call because I started saying, hey, listen, we need the vitamin A from carrots because it protects the epithelial lining of the lungs. And so I started talking that language, like vitamin D, vitamin A, how we can get these things naturally. My messaging kind of went, hey, listen, this is a great opportunity. Many of you have said you don't have time to exercise. Now you're all at home. We've got all the time in the world. We are actually going to get in the shape of our lives, right? Are you guys ready for this? So my messaging was very optimistic, very much talking about nutrient density, talking about sunshine, fresh air. And they were not liking it. I mean, I could feel the pushback when I would submit my segments the day before where they were asking more questions, right? And so when I started saying, hey, with this, if any of you have been exposed to this, just make sure you're getting plenty of vitamin A, start eating more things with beta carotene in them, like the carrots and the carrot cake that we're making today, because it's going to help protect the lungs. I mean, just me giving clues like that, they were just cringing. And so it was the Monday after Easter, and the station manager called me and he said, hey, Renita, I was just viewing the segment from your Thursday or Wednesday show. And he said, you're just moving in a different direction than us. And I said, what? I said, what does that even mean? And he goes, well, you're just moving in a different direction than us. We're just making some changes. And I said, well, the direction I've always moved in, that I haven't always moved in, is the direction of health and healing for North Dakotans and the well-being of our state and all of our viewing audience. I mean, that's been my primary focus for over 8.5 years. And he goes, yeah. He said, it's just a different direction than we're moving right now. And he didn't come right out and say, I'm just totally on the, I'm the captain of the craziest ship, and this guy is a claiming Christian, which always is comical to me, right? Oh, a claiming profession Christian, right? And I'm like, here he is, like cutting truth, right? Because of money. At the end of the day, it was all money. And I'll never forget one other thing that I didn't mention to you before. So it was done. That day was officially, I was like done, off the news. And I'll never forget when my friend that had been the friend of mine that had gotten shape. Of course, she got in the shape of her life. Of course, Christian, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Well,
Like,
you were
got off
directly
all,
involved. So,
got off all her medication. She was like thin. We were doing
Yeah.
5Ks. Now we went from her being overweight to like filming every 5K that her and I were doing together. I mean, that's pretty much how her journey went, which was incredible.
Wow.
And long story short, she called me up and she said, "Can I come over?" And we were sitting outside my house, and I will never forget her saying, "I feel guilty that so many people have lost their jobs financially and all of the money that they have been giving me." That's what she said to me. "I feel
Mm.
guilty, all the money." And I thought, I didn't put two and two together that, hey, these kingpin news reporters were literally being compensated big time, right?
Mm-hmm.
To move the agenda, to move the messaging. And she goes, "I actually feel guilty because I know all of the people that have lost their jobs during this. And here I sit and they're paying me royally." She never came right out and said, to move the
Yeah.
message,
Probably
but
feels like blood money
yeah,
is what,
like, but there was just a moment of truth that she had, that she was bearing with me that day. And honestly, I just knew then that that was not somebody that I could be associated with anymore. So that was the last time we spoke. And I mean,
Wow.
so I actually ended a relationship out of that deal as well, because I thought, you know what? I just can't be around this energy. It's very deceiving.
Yeah, no, it is. And I wanted people to hear some of these stories because there's a grit and there's a conviction and a commitment to truth and freedom that is part of you. And we both share that. And truth is a lonely warrior sometimes. And it's not popular to speak truth to power or to bring sunlight to vaccines or pharmaceuticals or whatever. They just don't like that. And you and I have talked before, and I think we both could have made a lot more money over the years if we were willing to champion things we don't agree with or don't believe in.
Right.
And what I love about you is you won't do that. And you'll stand by something and you'll actually do your due diligence and go get the lengths of certifications to make sure you know what you're talking about.
Right.
And when you find something that can be a significant game changer, you'll get behind it. And to me, that made you somebody I wanted to talk to in my exploration of this idea of light therapy and phototherapy. And like, I got to be able to talk to somebody that I'd trust who would share my values. And they have a history of demonstrating they have a spine. And so here we are, and
Yeah.
I'm delighted to be able, because
Thank you.
it's something I've studied for a while. And interesting, I blame a few people. I had a client turn me on to the idea of a Russian blanket many years ago, and I just kind of filed it. I didn't know what to do with it, but it's this idea that it kind of bounces the body's light back into it and can help you heal. And so I'm like, I don't know how to study a Russian blanket, and several things. And then Catherine Austin Fitz came to town, and her and I just talked off the record, and she's got me reading all these books on quantum energy and trying to understand this invisible aspect of health so that I can kind of bring a Christian perspective to some of this stuff. And so there's a lot I've been looking into. And
well, I've always said that quantum physics is prayer. Like, so as
right.
Christians, we should embrace it the quickest of
right. It's
any
the fastest way to do anything.
Hello, I have three sons, and when one was in college, I was praying for him. He was 3 hours away, but I believe those prayers were being received by him, right? Like, I believe like what I was saying and what I was throwing out to God, and the atmosphere, the energy, the world was actually being received by Bo and changing his environment, right? And so as Christians, we've always believed in the power of prayer, right? I mean, this is why we all pray. Or is it just, I've always said to my husband, like, we should have been first as Christians and those who just believe in the abundance of God. We should be the ones first to lead this whole, quantum physics, quantum realm charge, because it essentially is prayer, and its thoughts are things. And it's like, our mouth, blessings and curses are coming out of the mouth. I said to Scott the other day, what if it all is just literally the intention of our body healing itself and voicing that out loud, and then it's done? What if? Yeah. What if it's just like that? What if this whole other arena has been just created to sell, right? And so I just think to myself, yeah, it's really interesting when you step your toe in that. I've been in that for a while, because then again, just like I was battling the news station, now I'm battling Christians that's saying I'm occultic. And I said, well, this is occultic because it has been hidden. So if you look up the word occultic, it means hidden. So, these things have been hidden from Christians, and we've been kind of on this one trajectory where we've trusted, modern medicine. And I actually said to my husband about, 6 years ago, I said, well, what happened before modern medicine? Did everybody just die off that was sick? I said, I mean, think about how the world existed, you know what I mean? Like, even through biblical times for thousands of years, and not everybody's dead. And the pharmacological industry only came into play, 100, 150 years ago. And so you're telling me that we need these drugs to live. Like, no, we don't. Like, we don't need them. And so, but it's so interesting how Christians will hate the idea of breathing and movement because it's called yoga. I'm like, well, then call it Pilates, right? Call it stretching.
Or breathing.
Or
Right.
breathing, right?
Yeah.
Who cares about, they're getting too caught up with the name. And I'm like, because I've seen people that have done yoga classes that are in their 70s that have not had to have back surgery after doing yoga. I said, they're not walking in worshiping some weird God. They're Jesus lovers and Jesus lives in us, but they're stretching and breathing, which they might not have done individually. Now they're in a class doing it with a bunch of old people, and now they don't have to have back surgery. Now, I don't care who you are. You can't tell me that that is satanic. Like, I think that people not having to have surgery and not having to take their drugs is actually freedom. And so, but you know what, I feel like now we're contending with this Christian mindset where you're talking about, you know, we can't say the word yoga. We can't say even quantum physics sometimes is hard for Christians to wrap their mind around or to step into because they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, meanwhile, we all carry around cell phones. Right. Like,
and do invisible
like,
things. Right.
Oh, exactly. The whole time. And I'm like, what? Like, so there's really this misalignment and lack of education. And it's a brainwashing, Christian, that you and I are now, we're helping to overcome people that have been, I always say, brainwash yourself before the world brainwashes you, because we are all being brainwashed. All of us are being brainwashed. And so you got to brainwash yourself and your family, because if not, you're going to get the brainwashing of what's happening from the world, which is pretty sickening for the most part.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's fun because one of the kind of ways that helped me shift my thinking, I interviewed Andreas Kalker, I don't know, a year and a half ago, whatever it was. And he was talking about biophysics and how chemistry is just kind of a subcategory of that. And we live in such a chemistry centric model, but when you can appreciate there's magnetism and electricity and light and sound and motion and temperature and all of these different things are related to any one of them. If I run a strong enough magnet by you or enough temperature or enough electricity, you're going to feel it. And just because we can't see them doesn't make them not real, but there's measurable things in this realm that have so much impact. And so obviously we're limiting ourselves to just light today, but there's that when you can have the paradigm to say all of these are created things. And as we recognize or are able to measure them, so there's that great verse, I think it's in Proverbs, it says it's the glory of God to conceal a matter and it's the glory of kings to seek it out. Like he delighted in like hiding things. Like, I wonder how long it's going to take him to find that. And we go figure out more about how he made this world, but it doesn't have to be threatening if we can hold that there's a difference between the creator and created things. And there's wisdom or reason to be skeptical. And it's not that we should put all that aside, but let's exercise some intellectual heft here and see what we can find. And that to me has been a fun exploration of light and phototherapy. And so
I think of Hosea too. My people perish because of lack of knowledge, right? I mean, so it's just like foundational here, guys. Like, we've got to get after it. But I've said this often and I'm guilty of it too. And you too, probably, Christian, because we talk a lot of nutrition and nutraceuticals and all that, but we've been very biochemically trained as a world where you take this pill, you eat this food, right? Phytonutrients, phytochemicals, you're eating this and it's creating a biological change in the body. And we're masters of talking this, right? This is how I help the state to lose 100,000 pounds of fat. So I feel like I can talk nutrition all day long. I mean, you want to talk keto? Do you want to talk intermittent fasting, blood sugar stabilization? We could talk them all. But again, you're still literally utilizing this biochemical to create a biological. The thing we've not discussed is the bioenergetic realm, like you're talking about, this bioenergetic, this bioelectrical realm, whether it be the sunlight or different frequencies of light, or even just different people. There is a transference of energy happening between people. You get around people and you either get fired up or you get repelled, right? And so I feel like there's this energetic thing happening, the invisible realm that we can't see all day long. And what if, I've always said, you don't go on the front porch and open your mouth and let the deep drop in. Okay. You're not standing. None of us are standing on our front decks today with our mouth open to get the vitamin D. No one's opening their mouth for vitamin D, right? Like the natural sunlight, but that's the bioelectrical that's coming in, creating the most massive biological response. Vitamin D is necessary for every single one. Light from the sun, the spectrums of light are necessary for every single one of our cells to function properly, right? And that is literally from the rays of sun. So again, there's that bioelectrical creating the biological. So I feel like that's the realm that all healthcare is moving into now, where we're moving away from this, this juggernaut of the biochemical and the pharmacological, and even nutraceuticals, because I'm like, nutraceuticals and pharmaceuticals are kind of the same, right?
Yeah, you stay in the chemistry lane, you're still going to stay stuck. And if we can't recognize that was weaponized and built by monopolistic interests to
Right.
keep us in a particular trance. And we can say, hang on, there's a lot more to, like, we know prayer works. Like, okay, well, maybe we can tease out some mechanisms of it, or we can understand something else more fantastic about how God set the world up to work. But we don't need to be afraid to let go of at least opening up to what else has Rockefeller hid from us, perhaps,
Right.
and kept us from being able to find. And
And
once,
what was it that they said? Like, why did they make it the Christians afraid of the tree huggers? Like, you know, the tree huggers, there was something, it's negative ions when we get out next to the ocean
yeah,
and the elements, right? There's all this stuff happening with the electrons, right? I mean, I look at my mom with Parkinson's and the difference that she's had with the patch, single-handedly out of all the modalities of healing we've done with my mom since she was diagnosed with Parkinson's 8.5 years ago, the thing that created the biggest, most impressive response was the phototherapy patch,
yeah,
Christian. That was it. But I can tell you first-handedly, have we prayed about this? Yes, we prayed about this, right? But sometimes prayer moves you to an idea, to a person, to a relationship, to an element like the patch, right?
mm-hmm.
So I think sometimes people say, well, I'm still praying about it. I'm like, well, this is where the miracles are happening. And as a Christian, we should probably run to where the miracles are happening. Okay.
Yeah,
To check that out over there. I'm going to go see, it's kind of like you're in the desert and there's a fire burning over there. I'm going to go check out that light. Right.
yeah,
And so, but I've also realized that, like my mom, energetically, bioelectrically, there's something that happens when she's walking around with shoes. Maybe her gait is not as good. And we throw her on the beach barefoot and she's walking 1,000 meters with her dog. No stuttering, no stumbles. So I'm like, okay, there's no pills. There's no, it's not a placebo effect. She doesn't know what we're talking about,
yeah,
right? She's 78. She hasn't been trained in this. So, but how can that energetically just be so different when she gets on that beach,
yeah,
right? So there's the bioelectrical, guys. So
yeah.
that is it. So I feel like this is the biggest, most impressive results that we're seeing is in this bioenergetic realm that hardly anybody's really talking about and that a lot of Christians are still scared of,
Yeah,
right?
well,
Like,
and so let's go there. So back to phototherapy. So a lot of people, myself included, until recently, I was aware of or appreciated that light comes into the body, but I didn't have a framework for light coming out of the body. There's a couple books I read, just Catherine made me read them. I'll blame her for it, but both of them talked about how you could put a person, they would do this. They put a person in a completely black room where there's no light whatsoever, and then they can measure the light coming out of the person. And basically what this technology is doing is I'll give a short version. You can kind of correct me if I miss something, but it's a non-transdermal patch, which means it doesn't put anything into the body. It's only about the size of a quarter. And it's more or less a fancy mirror that reflects light back into the body and then stimulates a copper peptide, which has this whole host of benefits when that happens. Not the least of which is stimulating the body to produce stem cells, which we'll talk about that in a little bit. But we got so many stories to get to, but I want to go back to the beginning because you know and you interact regularly with the founder and the creator of this technology, David Schmidt. So I want you to help me tell his story or where this came from. I think originally he was working with Navy SEALs because we got this interest or background with the military. And he was tasked with creating a product to help them kind of maintain alertness through long bouts of sleep deprivation. So do I have that right or anything
yeah,
you can correct about how I said that?
Yeah, you're saying it perfectly. The technology, again, light has been around forever, since the beginning of time, right? God said, let there be light. But this technology in particular, 20 years ago, David was contracted by the DoD, Department of Defense, to create a wearable phototherapy, photobiomodulation technology for the Navy SEALs to wear during Hell Week, because back then, 20 years ago, if you remember, Christian, ephedra was really popping, right? People were taking the ephedra to lose weight and have like that cognitive alertness.
Yeah.
And so, but they were having heart problems. And so a lot of these military guys were popping these pills to stay alert and awake during these 40-hour missions, and they were ending up with heart palpitations and all kinds of crazy stuff, right? So David, of course, was brought in to say, hey, let's create a technology that these guys can use and wear during these submarine missions where they have to be alert and awake for 40 hours. And he did it. He created the very first phototherapy patch with LifeWave. It's actually called Energy Enhancer. And it's a 2-patch system, a white and a tan patch. You wear the white on the right side of the body, the tan on the left. So it's like a positive, negative charge. But that patch actually activates and is used, and the reason it works to elevate the energy and balance the energy is because it actually utilizes fat oxidation. So when you wear that patch, you actually burn more body fat, especially when working out. They have a study where it shows you burn up to 30% more body fat. well, you're working out. And so I'm like, gosh, the world needs the energy enhancer, right?
Right.
With all the metabolic conditions everybody's got going on. And so that's how it started, and it worked. I mean, it worked beautifully. There was no accidents. The energy was phenomenal. So it was like a success. Well, what happened was, I think it would have probably continued in the realm of the DoD, but 9/11 hit. And so when 9/11 hit, it was like, boom, they are like literally, and again, 9/11 is a whole nother controversial talk that we could talk about, right? But the bottom line is that was like now the focus. And so no, it was no longer on this, like, alternative ways of increasing energy. And so then David was kind of sitting there with this technology in his hand, like, okay, well, what next? Because now there's been a huge pivot. And he actually got a phone call from one of the amazing swim coaches down in Stanford University in California, Richard Quick. And he actually called David and said, hey, listen, I heard you've got this phototherapy wearable patch technology. Can my athletes wear it? They've been dragging. They're not doing as well, with their numbers. We'd like to get some of them qualified for the Olympic swim team. We're not having the performance that we want. Can they wear this patches, number one? And number two, are they going to test positive on a drug test?
Yeah,
right?
important.
The question every NCAA coach wants to know, right? And of course, David came back and said, yeah, no, nothing's entering the body except for light, like you mentioned earlier, Christian. So the only thing entering the body is light, different spectrums of light. And with this particular patch of the energy enhancers, that spectrum of light is activating fat oxidation, right? So of course, he goes over there, starts patching these Stanford swimmers. In the first 3 weeks of patching, every single swimmer, not some of them, all of them, every single swimmer broke their PRs in practice.
Wow.
In practice. So, I mean, this, you're an athlete. We've got kids that are athletes. People generally they're not breaking PRs in practice. It's like a game day, race day, right?
Yeah.
But here it was in practice, all of them really blew by their PRs, and 4 qualified for the Olympic swim team. And it was a great success. In fact, it's so funny because how sometimes God shows you something many years in advance, and then you come around full circle and there it is again. Yeah. Well, my husband and I actually remember 20 years ago, like watching ESPN, and we remember watching the swimmers, and we remember seeing the patches on the swimmers' back, and the commentary of the media was saying, what are these swimmers wearing? We're going to have to find out what these patches are. Is this some type of steroid enhancement patch? Are these athletes doping? Like, was kind of the commentary.
Yeah.
So we actually have a letter in our LifeWave back offices from WADA, the World Anti-Doping Association, that says they actually took these athletes out of the water, drug tested them, tested what was in the patches. What are they giving these athletes? And it's so funny, Christian, that my husband and I literally witnessed that on ESPN. We recall that when we heard the story of David, we're like, oh my gosh, we actually watched that happen in real time. Now here we are in this business, right? But long story short, obviously everything came back saying there's nothing illegal here. We don't know how they're getting so fast.
Oh, man, yeah. Just those parts of the story. So fast forward 20 years, he's been filing patents and studying light therapy, making products, and some of them hit and some of them are maybe not as effective. But there's this collection of things. I was watching one of David Schmidt's presentations, and he talked about a worm that they had studied on, the planaria worm. I don't know if you probably know more about this than I do, but that they were using to see, because if you don't know, a planaria worm, if you cut its head off, it'll just regenerate the body. Right. And so they're trying to figure out, well, okay, what do this technology, does it impact the worm at all? So they got a worm to regrow what would normally take 17 days to do it in 1 day.
Yeah.
And so you can go look all this stuff up if you want, but it's another window into, hang on, something significant's happening here. And I mentioned earlier that there's this idea that it stimulates a copper peptide. So for those of you who don't know, peptide is just a short chain of amino acids, which are little building blocks the body uses to perform functions. So similar to how light influences and creates a function, like starts the process of producing vitamin D, this other spectrum of light can produce this copper peptide, and it can have the ability to help stimulate the body in different ways to produce stem cells. So, and that's a big deal in the world of health these days, or in the realm of all the different modalities. Because if you don't know how stem cells work, essentially they're like a master key. When the sperm and egg come together, that's the cell that can then divide, and over time, eventually those stem cells turn into each differentiated type of tissue that we have. Which, as I'm piecing that together, listening to him talk about this worm, I'm like, holy cow! Like, rapid regeneration of things, which started to make sense of this torrent of stories I'm hearing about of how in the world are people recovering as quickly as they are. But what in there did I miss, or what can you add to that
No, you're
aspect?
exactly right. You're explaining it perfectly. I mean, he really went to work not only studying the planaria, but also lobsters, because lobsters actually get stronger as they age. They like live
Huh.
for an obscene amount of time, 150 years or something ridiculous. And they actually get stronger and stronger as they age. So not only was David studying the planaria, he was actually studying lobsters to say what in lobsters is literally creating this incredible, longevity, right? And so, and he found out, like, again, using different spectrums of light. Again, the modalities that David uses to test are not like we would typically use in the modern medicine world, right? Blood, urine, just those kind of commonalities that we are so used to saying here in the US. In fact, he does a lot of his research over at the University of Ireland, which is known as like the largest regenerative university in the world, where they're really studying things that we're not studying here, Christian. So for me, it's like, sometimes when people say, well, what are the testing modalities used? You could say it to a typical MD and they're not even going to know that language. They've never heard of that. Like this is like the world of quantum physics, like you said, it's not the biochemical realm like we've been so trained what the pharmacological industry is. It's, quantum physics and biophysics is, I feel like it's like when people say, I don't know if I believe that, I'm like, well, it's not that they're not smart enough, but we're just not smart enough. Like we haven't studied that, and all, so when I started learning this, I'm like, it's not that it doesn't exist. It's just that my knowledge base hasn't encompassed this yet. Right.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on here. And so it's like, but we can learn anything. And as you grow and you realize, wow, David is using not only like thermography, like that we're probably, familiar with in the United States.
I've got an episode just on thermography on my podcast.
Yeah. So, those are the modalities that is more common knowledge to David. But in addition to that, it's all these other ways of testing that honestly, I had never heard of in my life.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what are these? But it's because we're not using them here. They're using them in a lot of international markets and not yet here in the United States. So yes, everything you're saying about the light. And so his goal was to literally find out a way to activate this peptide. And for people that don't know what peptides are, they're just chains of proteins strung together, right? So peptides, we all know about peptides, by the way. When people say, I've never heard of peptides. Well, it's becoming commonplace. A peptide that a lot of people maybe have never heard of, might be GHKCU, but a peptide that they probably have heard of is insulin. Right. Mm-hmm. And so another peptide they've heard of is collagen. So, the knowledge base is expanding. And so the beautiful thing about peptides is they can be injected, right? So we could inject GHKCU, we can inject insulin, right? But what if there was a way
to make your body
on
its own terms?
On its own terms, not an excessive amount, like the exact amount that the body needs, because the body's so perfect, how God created us fearfully and wonderfully. Mm-hmm. So what if there was a way that would literally, through light, could stimulate this peptide production? That's exactly what David figured out. And so in the case of X39, instead of an injection, which I always say injections are short-lived.
Define what is X39 for people who don't know what that means.
So X39 is the patch that came out 4 years ago. It's a phototherapy patch. It took the company from $30 million to this year over $600 million. So this is the patch that changed the game for LifeWave. All of David Schmidt's phototherapy patches are remarkable. Once you understand this guy, kind of how you are understanding him, he's a genius. So anything that he creates and talks about, he's genius. And I will tell you this, there's actually been 49 patches created. X39 is the one that changed the whole game with the company, because that's the one that activates the GHK copper peptide that you mentioned, which literally when you research that peptide, if you go Google it right now, GHKCU, what comes up is the holy grail of anti-aging. That's what you're going to see. That's what it's called, is the holy grail of anti-aging. So when I read that, I'm like, holy cow. Have I been living in a van down by the river? How come I don't know about this,
I feel the same way.
peptide? Yeah. Like, I consider myself to be cutting edge, Christian. You too, probably, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm like, where have I been? How come I didn't know about this? But I always feel like when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Yeah. And so I was ready to receive it when I came onto it. But long story short, with this peptide, the reason it is so remarkable is because we could go get it injected, and then the half-life, get the injection, you walk out of the clinic. How long does that last? Who knows, right? With this patch, it just keeps on activating that GHK copper peptide. So you wear the patch 12 hours on, you take it off while you're sleeping for 12 hours, you put a fresh patch on the next morning. And literally the whole time your body is a regenerating machine, regenerating all of these healing cells that you were talking about earlier, right? That can literally repair and rejuvenate any system, any organ system, right?
Yeah.
The reason people die is their stem cells are depleted. You need stem cells to repair the organ systems, which is why so many elderly died during the pandemic, because they didn't have the stem cell activity to go in and replenish and regenerate all these organ systems that were starting to fail. And
Yeah,
then
well, I mean, naturally, our stem cell production slows down as we age. So this is kind of a way to like you buffer or boost it, and where
you
some
got
of
it.
these stories come
And
from.
chronic inflammation. So David has said that really, the two main things that are kind of depleting this stem cell creation and activity going on in our body, which literally is like God's gift to us, by the way. Let's just call it what it is. It's God's gift to us. But the number one thing that is depleting it is aging. And number two is chronic inflammation. Well, welcome to the inflammation nation, the good old USA, right? Where we're spraying chemicals everywhere. And so the bottom line is we have literally, we're combating both when we put this patch on, right? We're combating, because some people say, well, why does a 20-year-old need the patch? But by age 30, if you guys are listening today and you've got if you're 30, you've got a 60% reduction of stem cell activity. I mean, Christian, I'm not sure how old you are. Yeah. I'm almost 50. And, by 50, you've got like a 75% reduction of stem cell activity. I mean, that should make you like startled.
Right. Yeah. Well, but,
right?
knowing that it doesn't, there are things as simple as, like if you said, putting a sticker on your body that bounce light back in, that can significantly change your body's function. Like there couldn't be something easier than that. And what for me was fun was to say, okay, well, like I like to think of myself as a skeptic by nature. It's probably you, because we've just heard so many things and so many inflated promises. And back to the hydroxy cuts of what the Navy SEALs were taking. Like let's find stuff that actually works. And then there's the depth of research. There's about 100 patents on this stuff. What was fun, what you can help me with, is when I went trying to do my due diligence on the company, I go to the website, and on the US website, I can't find any of the studies listed there. And I'm like, so I eventually found them on the UK website. I'm like, okay, there's got to be a story behind this. Why in the world is this information I'm assuming not allowed to be, or there's some strategic reason why we have to hide the studies because somebody doesn't want this out there? So talk about some of the regulatory roadblocks, or some of the reasons how this technology has been forced to keep pivoting and iterating over the years.
Yeah, I will tell you that we are in good standings with the FDA. LifeWave is considered a wellness device. So it's not a drug. Like we can't make medical claims. We can't treat, cure, prevent disease. Now, with that being said, Christian, I've seen thousands and thousands of miracles, right? That I've never, ever seen any drug ever do, right? Even started with my mother, right? With her Parkinson's. And like I said, the patch single-handedly did more for my mom in the first 11 days than years and years and years of, she takes one drug, levodopa, cardopa, Cinnamate. And we were trying to get her off of that always, right? Because I hate legal drugs. I'm just against them.
Well, but let me insert one thing for people listening. If you don't know, if you've been in the pharmaceutical model, the word pharmaceutical comes from the word pharmakia, which literally means witchcraft or sorcery. That is, if you had want to plant your flag on the chemistry model, appreciate that that's where it comes from, and that's behind why she's interested in getting her mom off of witchcraft and sorcery.
And I'm not saying that we might need it. I always say if I get ran over, don't just put a patch on me, Christian. Take me to the hospital. I mean, for crisis care, let's be honest, the USA, you want to be here. You don't want to be in another, third world country. You want to be in the USA if you have a medical emergency. But for long-term health is really what we're talking about, to stop the aging process and even reverse the aging process. And David really is on a mission to not only reverse aging, but disease cessation, right? And so in this chronic disease world that we live in, this is the guy that is saying, hey, listen, I think we can do something about it with light, not with another pill, not with another, surgery, but actually with light, not with needles, right? But with light. And so for me, I feel like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. And I look at my dad. My dad was a one patch wonder. My mom, it took 11 days for her to experience the results on the patch, and continue to. Now we're 2 years, almost 2.5 years in, and my mom lives independently. I mean, it's just remarkable. This is the woman who couldn't eat, couldn't drink. We took butter knives away from her. Christian, I was crawling under bathroom stalls at restaurants to get my mother out. It was she couldn't brush her teeth. She would literally, I would stand behind her and help brush her teeth. She was 98 pounds. She, started at 169 and wasted away to 98. And this patch, it brought her back to life. She's 124. I call her Rocky Balboa. like she's boxing. Like, I mean, she's like, I said to her today, I just left her house, literally just left her house before I came back over here. I said, Mom, could you peel these 5 potatoes? Because I want to help you put together a little casserole. And she goes, yes. She's peeling potatoes with a paring knife. This is the woman I took butter knives away from, literally, because she was hurting herself. Like, she would like not be buttering the toast. She'd be hitting the water glass and breaking it into a million pieces. And so, I mean, it was crazy stuff. And so, okay, so that was my mom, but my dad was a one-patch miracle. And what I want to say is, with my father, it wasn't that we weren't trying to get him well. He had these oozing, goozing, very edemic looking legs. No one could give us a diagnosis, although I didn't really need a diagnosis. I just felt like something was not metabolizing correctly. He was not getting through some detox cycle of some sort. But for 6 months, and I'm pretty relentless. I'm like you, Christian. You can tell, like, we have a relentlessness about us where we're just going to stay in there. And so I had taken him everywhere from Mayo Clinic, all the traditional that his, insurance would cover, right? University of Minnesota, to no avail. The last dermatologist at Mayo told him he was going to have to live with it, right? Well, he's a Marine. Semper Fi to all the Marines in the house. This guy bleeds red, white, and blue. And so he's like, yeah, I'm probably not going to, just sit here and say that, conform and say, yeah, this is okay. Because he can't sleep, he can't walk, he was miserable. And so, and we were trying nutraceuticals, again, high octane, really well-known nutraceuticals. If I said the names, you'd be like, those are great companies, right? And so it's not like we weren't trying other things. We were trying everything in our power. I had taken him to naturopaths, homeopaths, I mean, everything. Well, that morning he was sitting there, and when my mom started walking across the kitchen with no walker on the 11th day of wearing the patch, and she, not only was she walking, she looked over at me when I walked in the house at 8 a.m. and she said, hey, Nita, do you want me to make you some eggs? This is a woman who hadn't cooked in 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. We wouldn't let her operate the stove type deal. Right now she's offering to make me eggs, walking normally through the kitchen with her cute black and white polka dot pajamas. And I said, hey, where's the walker? Where's the walker, Mom? She goes, oh, it must be in the bedroom. I said, since when don't you need the walker at 8 a.m.? She goes, well, I didn't need it today. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. So that was the first miracle in 11 days in. And then Dad was sitting with those oozing, goozing legs. And I said, hey, and I wasn't like you on the front end of this. I had trusted a very, very amazing friend out of Canada who was a nurse and had left the medical industry because she knew it was very, very broken and was doing alternative energetic type stuff. And she said to me, Renita, you got to try this patch on your mom. She said, I saw a downright miracle with my neighbor lady with Parkinson's. And I said, well, you had me at miracle, Doris. Let's give it a shot. So I didn't even know what was in the patch. I didn't know how it was working. I didn't know the avenue at which it was like creating these results. I just saw the results with my mom. So my dad was there that morning and I said, hey, can we put a patch on you? Maybe it'll help these legs that we've been dealing with for over 6 months, these oozing, goozing legs. I mean, we've spent thousands and hundreds of hours on these legs. My dad goes, I thought it was for Parkinson's. And I said, I have no idea what it's for, but I can't even believe what I'm seeing with Mom. Maybe we should just try it, on you. I said, we're trying everything else. And he goes, you know what? Let's do it. So I threw it on my dad's shoulder. And the next morning we came back and I literally fell to my knees and was crying and praising Jesus when I opened the front door. And my husband couldn't believe his eyes. We stood there in awe, literal in awe. It was like a miracle before our eyes. And my dad very nonchalantly said, looks like I'm going to need some more of those stickers. Looks like that sticker worked. He called it a sticker. And so I'm like, you have got, and then in that moment, I'm like, what's in the patch? What's in the sticker? Like, how did it do that for 2 radically different ailments? Like, how did it do that for my aging parents? Like the things that they were dealing with were not on the same spectrum, right? And so, I mean, maybe we could say mitochondrial dysfunction, right? But outside of that, it was just like.
Well, and they're both things that the medical world told you don't get better. Like, just get used to living with it. And Parkinson's is incurable. Like, that's what that's how they described it.
Yeah, exactly. And so what happened was that happened. And so when I saw those 2 things, and I thought to myself, when I learned that this patch was activating the GHK copper peptide and all the amazing healing things. I mean, it resets up to 4,000 of our genome to a younger, healthier state, right? It's like a regenerative switch, right? And so when I realized that, I was like, oh, that's why it worked for both Mom and Dad. But the crazy thing I thought of is we are taking handfuls of pharmaceuticals and nutraceuticals as a nation. And people are very, like my dad, how was his stomach lining at 80, chronically constipated,
Right.
chronic, low functioning kidney, right? Your liver enzymes are slightly elevated, right? So they've got poor stomach, liver, and kidney health. Now we're giving people more pills,
Right.
more chemistry,
Yeah.
right? For this biological response that we're hoping happens.
Hmm.
And I realized the beauty of this patch, Christian, the thing that gets me so fired up is, hey, I love the world of quantum physics. I love the world of bioenergy now. As
Hmm.
a Christian woman, I'm
Yeah.
saying that out loud.
Yeah.
Why? Because that patch didn't have to filter through my aging mom and dad's stomach, liver, or kidneys,
Hmm.
which are probably not in the greatest shape in the elderly of our country.
Right.
Right. And so because that patch didn't have to filter through those organ systems, it worked that quickly.
Yeah.
Like it just went to work on it. Like it was like literally like it was like an on switch on their bodies that just need. I mean, are you kidding? Right. So for
Right.
me, I'm like, everybody that's tried the pharmacological, they've tried the nutraceutical, and they're still not any better.
Hmm.
And I'm telling you that, like I said, pharmaceutical, nutraceutical, I mean, it kind of has the same tone. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, we might need to flip switch completely and go to this bioenergetic realm, which is, I think, where it's like the Tesla realm,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
The
yeah. If you
secrets
want,
of the
what do you say?
universe.
If you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Like he was
Yeah.
onto something. There's something else here that we can't see it, but it impacts us. And the more we can look at that with an honest eye and yes, bring your skepticism, but also don't be so closed-minded you won't learn anything. Like
Yeah.
my foray was like the number of doctors I've heard talk about how it helped them and then helped their patients. And then people I know, I'm like, I would be stupid to just dismiss that. I have to look into it.
Yeah.
Right. But I needed, like, unlike you, I needed a bridge, or like you, I needed a bridge of somebody I trusted to help me get a way into studying this so I could honestly get behind it. So
Yeah.
anyway,
And can I be quite honest with you? Someone had sent me a sleeve of X39 patches 1 year before I got started with my
huh,
dad and mom. And I remember receiving them, looking at that, thinking, oh, maybe this is new agey. Like I literally had that thought as a Christian.
yeah,
And I think I threw them in a garage tub.
yeah.
No
Sometime you'll
joke,
find
Kristen.
them. Yeah.
I wasn't ready to receive it, but only when I was face down with mom and dad. Like I always say, maybe some people don't want to try the patch because they're not sick enough yet. Maybe they
Yeah.
haven't suffered enough yet. They wanted to do some more suffering. I was ready to step out of that spirit of suffering
Yeah.
into the light, into the healing. Like I was like, okay, I've had enough of this. There's got to be something. And I'm a chronic seeker. I believe in the Bible, seek and you will find.
Hmm.
I'm that person where I just
Hmm.
continually will seek. And so it was almost like my openness to receive.
Hmm.
And I had a lot of free time because I was off the news, right? And so for me, I'm like, oh, I've got all this free time. Like I need to look at this now.
Yeah.
And so I always think too that was kind of a setup with the news thing from God, because had God not taken me off of there, I'd probably still be on there educating North Dakotans because I loved it so much. But here we are now with a global team. I mean, Scott and I think have 90,000 people on our team globally, and I work with international markets. And here's the great news about stem cells. Everybody on the planet needs them. We've got 8 billion people on the planet, and everybody's stem cells are not functioning well because of aging and because of inflammation, Christian. And we've got a really, really simple solution to activate this peptide with GHK copper peptide with light, non-invasive, incredibly easy, affordable. I mean,
Right.
hello.
Non-invasive, non-expensive, but just for kicks, or compare, because there's other modalities, other options and treatments in the stem cell world. So compare the cost of some of those things people might have, or give some people windows into like, and where are the stem cells you're being injected with coming from? Like there's things that aren't there. The informed consent isn't high on some of this. So give people a little window into some of the other stem cell options they have.
I by no means I was no expert on stem cells. I know now I always say I hang out with really smart people, just like you. You're really smart. And so you become the company you keep, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm thankful for all my smart friends. But we had considered taking mom down to Tijuana for stem cell injections. I think it was called the Stem Cell Centers of America. And I had heard that for Parkinson's people, you can inject stem cells and it might work. I had also heard that they were injecting stem cells and people were growing toenails in their brains with Parkinson's. Or not people, but rats. Rats. Over internationally, they were doing a study with Parkinson's, and the rats would die because they had toenails growing in their brain because it was like going to the wrong place or something crazy was happening with these injectables. Wow. And so I got a little leery. So we were talking to the Stem Cell Centers of America, and I said, what is the cost? And they're like $10,000, but it only works in 50% of people. Your mother might need to come back for multiple visits. my mom, we're conservative German Russians up here. So we're frugal. And so we were not like wanting to drop $10,000 on an injection, then go back multiple times. And it was like mid-pandemic. So my mom's like, yeah, I don't want to go over the border to Tijuana necessarily. It doesn't sound
especially
super
for a
safe.
50-50 chance of success.
Yeah. And then my biggest question, which is always my question, is what's in the needle, right? This is the question I've been asking for over 20 years. So what's in the needle? And when they couldn't, really blatantly tell me exactly what the ingredients were, I just was like, you know what, I don't want it to be aborted baby fetuses, because that's against my fundamental Christian belief system that I have, right? Like, so for me, there was this like moral and ethical problem with some things being injected. I will tell you this, I have many, many doctors on my team, over 400, and we actually have stem cell injection clinics now that love using the patch as an adjunct therapy, because of course, when you inject somebody, yeah, they might have a response and they might not have a response, but now they can actually send these patients on their way with something that they can do for themselves instead of come to this clinic for the high price point. And it's amazing the response that people are having when they're leaving and going home and putting these patches on. So when I realized that the patch was not like putting stem cells into your body, it was just activating this innate peptide that God put in our bodies, GHK, just like God put, insulin in our bodies, and God put collagen in our bodies, and God put all these peptides in our bodies. And all the light frequency from the X39 patch does is activate that, which reignites all of these healing cells to regenerate and heal the body and go to the greatest area of need. I thought, oh my gosh, this is genius. Like, we're stimulating healing with light. I actually sometimes think to myself, if we're in an 800 meter, my boys all run track. And my oldest son broke a lot of records in the country in track and field. And I think if we're at an 800 meter race, we're literally 600 meters ahead of the competition. Nutraceuticals is 600 meters back, because we are stimulating things energetically that nutraceuticals cannot do. And if they can do it, it doesn't happen quickly. It doesn't happen in a day, like my dad's legs. It's like turning on something in the body that actually can be activated with a needle injection for high cost, always risk of an infection, right? I mean, Dr. Josh Axe got a stem cell injection in his low back and was paralyzed for a year, right? So the bottom line is with stem cell injections, first of all, they're costly. What's in the needle, right? What are they injecting into you? And then thirdly, there's always this risk of error and infection, right? So it could go awry and you could have something crazy. With the patches, it's so beautiful because it's only activating what's already in your body. It's activating its own healing mechanisms. God designed healing mechanisms to turn on these peptides and these ways of healing energetically, the positive and negative frequencies of light, right, with the body. And so the only thing entering the body with any of the LifeWave patches is light. So like I said, David has created we have an X39 and an X49, which is good for heart health and bone density. But the crazy thing is only 11 of these patches actually are available in our back office. So then it makes you wonder, like, so there was X1, X2, X3, X4, X5, X6, right? X39, X40, X41, X42, X43, all the way up to X49. So you get what I'm saying? So there's all these, that's what they call them, is X1, X2, X3. So all of these were created, and there's only all the way up to X49, and there's only 11 in the back office. So then you start saying, well, why is there only 11? What happened to the rest? David Schmidt is what happened to the rest. If he can't scientifically, here's the science for all the science wizards and minds in the house, if he cannot validate and scientifically prove not only the safety, but the efficacy and the validity of how these patches are going to work and what they're going to do, he will not launch it to the marketplace.
There's over 80 clinical studies, I think, right? And then there's
90 clinical studies. 90. And actually, he's got this phototherapy water technology coming out this spring that already has 3 new patents and 2 in the works. And it's just going to be remarkable. It's going to be like a new species of water. So it's going to kind of combine structured water, hydrogenated water, oxygenated water, super clean water. And then he's going to light infuse that with that lobster. Remember we talked about the lobster, how back to the lobster, the endless lobsters. And he literally has figured out that frequency. And let me tell you this, it's divine, because when you really realize how David came upon this, he was praying to the Lord to give him solutions. And I always tell David, you're divinely downloaded. And he actually was going to, he had this number, this frequency of light that he thought might work to really reverse aging. And he found there was a scripture verse, and he literally said it jumped out of scripture, out of the Bible to him, where it was like, literally, I think that this is what God is talking about. And that morning, he plugged into his Bible study, and that exact verse that he felt like the Lord had given him was the verse in the Bible study that morning. And so I always say, yeah, be careful when you're onto something, because then you'll start seeing it and hearing it. Like God is like, you got it, you got it.
Yeah.
And so because of that, he was like, okay, I really believe that God is telling me to walk this out, walk this direction. And so that light frequency is now what's going to be in the water. Anyway, that's a whole nother ballgame. We got people literally drinking the water and taking off their eyeglasses and seeing perfectly. So crazy
Man,
stuff.
I know a story here. Somebody whose family member had was cross-eyed or had a wandering eye, and it just righted itself in very short order. And you're just, it's amazing.
The patches, I've seen 4 people cross eyes straight now. We're making cross eyes straight. There we go. So I don't know if that's a medical claim, but I don't know, because I don't know the mechanism of how that's happening. Maybe I'm guessing it's something nerve related, right? But the bottom line is here it is. I've got 4 people that I know personally that had cross eyes, and now they're straight because of the patch. Man. So, I mean, there you go. Right.
Yeah. Well, so like, you're telling a story and not making the claim. This is just what happened. So give a few more stories before we'll start to wrap up here, but any other stories of healing? And then I want to have you comment on pets, actually, because some people are patching their pets, and you can't argue there's a placebo effect going on there. So give us a couple more.
Never listen to your podcast or listen to a Zoom meeting, right? Like pets don't have a placebo effect either. It sure doesn't. But I mean, literally, and I'll just tell you this, because it was kind of this whole thing has been a divine appointment for me. On July 3rd, 2022, after I saw the miracle with my mom and my dad, I hadn't even used the patches yet myself, Christian. Imagine this. People say, I got to try it myself first. Well, I was the gal that didn't even need to try it myself, because I thought, holy Moses, if it did this to my aging mom and dad, I got a little bit of a sleeping problem. I wonder if it's going to help with that. Right. Yeah. And so I'm thinking it's got to, because these guys, my mom and dad, are like in rough, tough shape, right? Abuse of the body for 50 years. Right. And so, so I hadn't even really used the patches long yet, but it was the 3rd night of using the patch, and I had slept finally until 5:30 a.m. I was kind of a watchman, where I was up at 2 a.m. every day, reading clinical studies and praying. And then I was just really praying for rest. I was tired. And I'm like you, I'm super energetic during the day. It's amazing. I got through in that little of a sleep, but I was really praying that the patch would help that for me. That was my kind of ailment if I were to have one. Because I always say, you don't need to be sick to want to get healthy. Like, you don't need to be like decrepit and like falling apart at the seams before you put a patch on, right? Like, we should want to maintain that level of vitality and wellness and even improve it. Anyway, long story short, I had slept through the night, the 3rd night. It was the 4th night of wearing the patch, and I woke up. And when I woke up, before I opened my eyes, I heard a voice, and it said, you're entering an abundant season of miracles. I mean, it was just like that. And I was laying there kind of thinking, okay, like I'm talking to myself. You know how you kind of have that when you're kind of in that dream state still? Yeah, right. And I opened my eyes, and it was bright in the bedroom. Here I had slept until 7:30. And I mean, this was like, I had not done that. I just feel bad for anybody that lacks sleep. It's like a torture camp, you know? Anyway, bottom line is, I was like laying there thinking, oh my gosh, it's bright light in my bedroom. It's not 2 a.m. And I sat on the edge of my bed, and I heard it again. You're entering an abundant season of miracles. And I literally was like, oh, yes, Lord. Yeah. Yes, Lord. I stood up to my feet, and I said out loud, yes, Lord, like that. Like I was reporting for duty or something. And my husband goes, Renita, what are we saying yes to? I said, get up. We're entering an abundant season of miracles. And Scott is like, okay. Like he flies out of bed, you know, and I'm like, and literally I can tell you every single day since we've been in LifeWave, it has been an honorable blessing from heaven sent to earth for me and for everybody who grabs a hold of it. But it's like I have an inbox full of miracles. I mean, the one that I was on a meeting last night with my Canadian team, and I have a friend up there, and she had a friend who had a huge lipoma on his back. I mean, it was just like this heaping lipoma, and he's had it for 14 years. And he's been wearing the patch now. I posted on my Facebook page yesterday. I mean, literally for 6 short weeks, and the lipoma is nearly gone after 14 years. And so again, like you can't deny this stuff. Like, you know what I mean? And so we see people with COPD. I've got about 4 people on my team that have COPD that are no longer carrying around their oxygen tanks. The tanks are gone and they don't need them anymore. So it does a lot for lung stuff. Anybody with acute lung injuries, it seems to just, and which everybody had. Like over the course of the last 5 years, I'm like, oh my gosh, run to them with patches. Brain fog lifts. I mean, my son, Bo, he was one of the only 2 kids that did not get the shot on the college track team. And he really caught hell for it. And long story short, I mean, it was downright abusive how the coaches and the teammates treated him. So it was a little bit of a anxiety that he came home with from college, right? And so Bo got on the patch, and it was the 8th day. And he said, Mom, he said, that low-grade headache I've had for a couple of years is gone. He said, I am just thinking clearer. He said, I can't describe it, but I think there's something to this patch. And I said, wow. And then he went out and proceeded to run his fastest track season of his college career. Every record, listen to this, every race, he would get faster than the race before. I mean, it was like a superhero. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then they actually came in, Christian, and they drug tested him on 3 or maybe even 4 separate occasions during the final semester. When does a kid get drug tested more than once? Our son got drug tested 3 times because they thought he was doping. And I said, Bo, did you tell him I'm not doping, I'm patching? He said, I did, Mom. And so now Bo is like literally spreading the message everywhere. He moved down to Scottsdale. He's helping everybody on the pickleball courts. He just talked to a woman in the elevator where her daughter fell off a horse and lost her hearing when she was 9, and Bo was like, I think I've got something that's going to help you in the elevator, right? You know, we've got our 24-year-olds patching people in the elevator, but the bottom line is it's literally for everyone, you know, and we could talk animals because animals don't have a placebo effect. Like either it's working or it doesn't work when it comes to the animals. And so we've got a ton of veterinarians using the technology. We've got professional race horses. We've got dogs, cats. People are patching their birds. I can tell you a really quick story about a very close friend of mine. My mom has a friend of hers who's got this little dog named Coco, and this is just real recent and real close to me. So I was like literally visually watching this miracle happen before my eyes. But this woman called me who's a friend with my mom, and she says, Coco has been at the vet for 2 weeks. I'm just going to bring her home to die because she's in kidney failure and they've been hooked up to IVs and she doesn't eat and she doesn't drink. So I'm just going to bring Coco home to die. So I can't see her mom as often. I said, let's put a patch on the dog. And she goes, you and your patches. I said, what do you got to lose? And she was kind of quiet for a second. She said, you're right. She said, can you help me? I said, yes. And so again, that's the openness. We want the openness and the readiness to change, right, Christian? When we're dealing with people, we want them to say, hey, yeah, let's give it a shot. And so let's give it a try. And so she came to me and I put an Eon patch, which is one of the patches that pulls the body from the sympathetic state, which is the fight or flight cortisol driven state, back to the parasympathetic state within 15 to 30 minutes. So I threw a little Eon patch on the top of the dog's head, Coco's head, and I put an X39, of course, on the base of the neck, right under the collar. And my friend left. And the next day, she said the dog slept the whole day. And she said, I thought to myself, is Renita trying to kill my dog? And then she said, no, Renita loves animals. Renita's crazy about dogs. And then she actually had a thought. Here's quantum physics. Maybe my dog is healing. Yeah, she didn't think that. She switched the thought from maybe Renita's trying to kill the dog to maybe my dog is healing because it's sleeping a lot today. There's the quantum physics, right? There's the thought thrown out in there's the God thought. Okay. And so she says, maybe my dog is healing. Well, that night, at the end of the day, the dog gets up, walks over to the water dish, starts drinking the water and eating the food. And I get a phone call from her saying, oh my gosh, Coco is eating and drinking. I said, praise the Lord. She goes, and I'm just thinking like it's a normal thing, like it's going to happen, right? Because I live in that atmosphere. So many times now. Yeah. You know what? Expectancy is the atmosphere for miracles in my world, right? So I'm just expecting it's going to work. And so then I said, great. I said, why don't we talk tomorrow and we'll put a fresh patches on Coco. So I said, take those off now, like let the body rejuvenate overnight and I'll see you tomorrow. So she brings the dog to my mom's place. The next day I meet her there to put another X39 and Eon on. And the dog comes running in this time And there's a little, like, one of those expensive rawhides that we buy, my mom's dog, on the floor. And she's like, her dog goes and starts chewing on it. And this woman says, oh my gosh, my dog's teeth have been loose in her mouth for 2 years. She has not been able to ever chew on a rawhide, like barely eat the crunchy food, right? Because her teeth are so loose.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, I can't believe what I'm watching. That little dog chewed on that rawhide for about a half an hour. She's like, I cannot believe my eyes. She goes, well, listen, Renita, I'm going back to the vet tomorrow. We're going to see what the vet says. I said, good idea. And so why don't you get some numbers to track all this stuff that's going on, right? And so she leaves and she kind of laughs. And I said, it's working. And she goes, well, it might be. And there it is, that energetic
Reserving the right to maintain her skepticism. Yes.
yeah. But yeah, she's still there. So the next day she calls me on the way to the vet. And she's like, what is the patches I have on the dog again? I'm like, are you kidding? LifeWave. No, she goes, hey, X39. And she said, what's the other one? I said, Eon and X39. And she goes, okay, I got it. So she goes there. She calls me after the vet and she goes, you're never going to believe this. I said, oh yeah, I am. And she goes, because when I've realized when people say you're never going to believe this, it's never bad. It's always good with the LifeWave patches. Yeah. It's never a bad response. It's always a good response. So when people say you're never going to believe this, just get ready for the miracle. And anyway, she said, I said to the vet, what do you think about these patches? And I pointed to the patch on Coco, and the vet turned around and pointed to the back of his neck. And he said, this patch, the one I'm wearing too. So her vet was wearing the patch, number one. And then number two, all of the numbers, the dog was like officially out of kidney failure. I mean, the dog, Christian, had wore the patch. At this point, it was the third day. The dog is being raised from the dead, right? Like, it's like the dog no longer has any of those symptoms. She said the liver enzymes were slightly elevated, but he thinks those are going to come down. But other than that, everything else was normal on the dog's blood labs, which she said 3 days ago, the dog was like in the death zone.
Brought home to die, right? Yeah.
So there you go.
Different mindset. So, wow. Okay. Well,
and I could tell you 100 more of pet stories, but I mean, here's the thing. Well, if you got an aging pet or a pet that just needs it, what do you have to lose? I mean, what else are you going to do? Like, I mean, put a patch on the dog, for goodness sake.
Right.
It's so easy. Right?
Cool. All right. Well, we got about 5 minutes left because I have to let you go here. But give people just a quick version of some expectation of how long they're wearing them, or over how much time do they do this? And then we'll just wrap up and
so when you get started with the patch, and by the way, if you guys haven't gone to Christian's website yet, it's so great. It's lifewave.com/Healing United. You should all get there, get yourself on these patches, right? Because I would definitely recommend when you go to lifewave.com/Healing United, click on the join button, because then you're getting the wholesale pricing. And I just like everybody to save a whole lot of money. I always say organic eggs are expensive right now, so we need to save money wherever we can. So when you go to your website there, and you'll see shopping with you, of course, Christian Elliott. So, lifewave.com/Healing United, click on the join button, and then you're getting that wholesale pricing. I would say do that. Now, the patches, generally you're wearing the patches 12 hours on and 12 hours off. So when you put those patches on, like the X39, I would say everybody listening should definitely get started with that patch. That is the patch that literally has created the miracles in my life and the ones that I continue to see. It's the patch that has the greatest benefit for the most amount of people, right? Because there are other patches in there, like there's LifeWave for acute pain relief. I mean, I've seen people get out of chronic pain after 40 years in 15 seconds with the LifeWave. In fact, I think that everybody throw the Tylenol and ibuprofen in the garbage and put LifeWave patches in your medical, we don't want to call it the medical cabinet anymore, the medicine set cabinet. Let's call it the health arsenal. In that health arsenal, get some light phototherapy patches of the LifeWave. So that way, when anyone has inflammation, you can put those patches on them. But definitely in that cart, you want X39, because that's the patch that literally is the difference maker. I mean, that's the one, like you said, is regenerating these regenerative cells of the body to heal and restore the body and the body parts. And so you wear the patch 12 hours on. I like to say wear it during the day, because during the day we're drinking more water. And now we could do a whole segment talking about hydration and, of course, intracellular hydration versus extracellular hydration. So we need the water to be getting in the cells. So I'm a big advocate in a pinch of a high quality salt, right? And you can probably have recommendations for that. Christian,
that was my last episode, actually, was about salt.
So a high quality salt, pinching that in there before you drink the water, just so that we can get that water I always say, how you're intracellular hydrated versus not If you drink water and you just pee like a racehorse, you're not. It's not staying in the cells. When you drink water, it's supposed to go into the cells and do its work for the cellular communication. And if you're just urinating it out, you're still dehydrated.
Yep.
So we need good intracellular hydration. So a good pinch of sea salt or whatever kind of salt you're using, and then drink the water. Increase your potassium. I always feel like Americans are potassium deficient, which is why so many people have hypertension. So increase your avocados. Food first. There's the biochemical.
Yeah, it's the health coach in us. We can't not be holistic with this. We have to
we can't be holistic. So so the avocados, the coconut water, those good rich sources of potassium, the heart functions on a sodium potassium balance. So that's super crucial as we begin to heal. But then you just put a patch on. So make sure you're well hydrated and put a patch on during the day, 12 hours on. When you go to bed at night, pull that bad boy off, throw it in the garbage, put a fresh patch on the next morning. And you just do that again and again and again and expect the miracle. And again, some people will see the miracle like my mom on the 11th day. Some people will see the miracle like my son on the 8th day. My dad was a one-patch miracle. I wish everyone was a one-patch miracle. Unfortunately, not everybody is, but we do get to see quite a few of those one-patch miracles. Yeah. We call them a one-patch wonder, right? Yeah. And so, and please share if you're putting the patch on and you're part of Christian's team. And I want to hear the miracles because I say, the world used fear as a currency. Fear, shame, and guilt as a currency in the last 6 years. We're using miracles as a currency over here. So get used to the joy that's that's happening in this realm, because we're all about miracles and joy and people taking back their power by believing they can. So that's where we're at in the light frequency realm. So it's good stuff.
Very cool. Well, Renita, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. Any final words of encouragement from your 25 years in the trenches? Anything you want to say to people before I let you go?
That you got the power, baby. You got that. We've had it all along, and now we're just stepping into the light to realize that we've got it. My advice to you is get lit up, get going on these patches and get lit up. I mean, we've all got to bring it back and regain that power that we innately have. And once you have that power, and once you understand that, innately, I always say God didn't give it to us. I mean, this is divine. We're just bringing it back to light. And once you have that, it'll be amazing how you're going to be just a magnet for people around you that are saying, what's different about you? Why do you have more energy? Why are you glowing? People say, why are you? I'm like, this is like a free facelift. You know what I mean? Because it's like people are like saying, you look 20 years younger. I'm like, yeah, it's amazing what happens when we bring light into the mix. Right. Yeah. So, yeah. All right. I just want to tell them your website one more time, lifewave.com/healing united. Hit the join button and join the LifeWave champions.
Right on. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us today, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thanks. God bless.
Thanks for listening to Deconstructing Conventional. If this conversation sparked new questions or helped you see things in a new light, feel free to share it with a friend who is on a similar journey. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode and a perspective that challenges the norm. Check us out on our website at healingunited.today and find us on social media at Healing United, or you can check out the Healing United PMA app. It's a great way to stay connected. Remember, question everything and rebuild intentionally.